They can tell you, see our
We're live.
meetings, here we go.
That's a great team.
Ready to adjourn.
I'm the regional interviewer.
Welcome everyone to the May 31st Academic Standards Committee meeting. We can briefly go around the table and introduce ourselves. Mary Ann McKee, School Board.
Andy Black, School Board.
Debbie Mackey, Family and Consumer Sciences, Council Rock North.
Dean Henn, Social Studies Coordinator.
Danielle World Language Coordinator. Renee Devlin, Science Coordinator.
Matt Frederickson, IT.
Julie Eastburn, Math Coordinator.
Denise Brooks, School Board.
Sue Elliott, Assistant Superintendent.
And Tate, School Board.
Jerry Grubb, School Board.
Well, actually, I think also.
There are more chairs.
Thank
Don't say
you.
who you are.
My name is Jack Annam. I graduated from South last year.
And was EAC President at
Yeah.
South.
That too.
Great, thank you all. We will be joined in progress by some other board members and I believe Mr. Desko. So first item on our agenda tonight, textbook approvals. Dr. Elliott.
Certainly, thank you. So we have four agenda items tonight, starting with our textbook approvals, and the curriculum coordinators are going to go over their textbooks that they're presenting to the board for approval for purchase for next year. And then we're going to have a presentation, a very brief presentation. I've done some analysis of our curriculum budget as per some feedback from the board last year at this time. I'm going to show some of that information. And then we have a agreement that Mr. Desko is going to go over with a company called Qualtrics. And then we also have a calendar discussion that was put on the agenda from a previous board meeting. So we're going to start with our textbook approvals. And our first textbook update, we have several science books. So Renee Devlin is going to talk about those textbooks for you.
So the first book I'd like to talk about is the 9th grade academic science book. We would like to replace a book that we have from 2005, so that is our need. There is not a lot of online activities for that book. We had 2 pilot teachers, one at North and one at South. Pilot this year, for the entire year. We met last spring. Every 9th grade teacher agreed on the book to pilot. We received a 7-year online license. And we did purchase the same publisher in 8th grade honors. And the thing we like best about it is it has a differentiation where the teacher could set it for the reading competency for students. So it's already in 8th grade honors, and we'll talk about 8th grade academic next. But it's nice that they have the same platform from 8th grade going to 9th grade. We received a 5% shipping discount if I purchase both books.
Who did the pilot in North?
Travis McGrath and Ashley Reynolds at South.
At 430 textbooks. 430 textbooks, this is a take home.
It is a take-home. Yep, comes with a class set.
Out of curiosity.
You keep their class set.
How much does it weigh? We used to do this.
Will do.
I know, so that's
Does it
what.
weigh?
What's it weigh?
Wait.
Oh, this weight is 4.6 pounds. That's why we like to keep them home, plus they last longer.
So then are you also buying a class? So,
They're allowed to keep their class set as a pilot.
okay, so we're keeping the class set.
Yes.
The students will take them home. But you only had one class set initially.
Two.
You had one
for
each.
each.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
It's replacing 6 mini books with no online components at all. And the readability is 7th to 8th grade. Which I think is good for academic because it's a lot of syllables. There's editable, all kinds of editable assessments and worksheets, virtual labs. Doesn't have. All right, any other questions on that one? I'm going to try to not confuse them. Okay, so same publisher, 8th grade academic science, and again, we implemented the 8th grade honors science with the same publisher, and the teachers really liked that. That was a 2-year pilot, and this year we rolled it out to everybody who bought it. Yes, July of 2017. So what's great about that is the kids change levels, and then all 8th graders will have McGraw-Hill going into 9th grade and have the same platform. This book is from 2003, and an interesting fact is it says that Pluto is a planet in our current book. So we need to upgrade.
Disney character.
Yes. all three middle schools piloted this book. And everyone was in a unanimous agreement, and they're already used to the publisher. They actually were fighting over which book they wanted to purchase first, the honors or academic. But this one, going in later, hopefully. And the readability on this book is 7th grade. Which is
Why?
what they said for syllabus.
Why 230 more of this than the previous?
Because there's only 2 levels in 8th grade. There's accelerated in academic, and in 9th grade, there's honors biology is 9th grade, which pulls from those sections, and then accelerated physical science and academic physical science. So there's 3 levels in 9th grade. There's only 2 in 8th grade.
We just looked at, can we just look at the, we looked at 9th grade.
Yes, 9th. And again, the shipping is 5% because he's happy we're looking at 2 books.
Yeah, could you explain to me what teacher resources for 10 teachers, what does that involve?
Which one?
Teacher resources for 10 teachers.
Oh, even though we don't have 10 science teachers, it includes the special ed teachers. So it
Oh, I
gives the teacher manual and teacher,
Right.
all the things that
Right.
they can do editable. It doesn't come with the student edition.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
And just out of curiosity, what's available for students with disabilities? Is it audio? Is it PDF? The full book?
The online version or the textbook?
What is a student with a disability who can't manipulate the pages?
They
Or
can have it audio read to them. They could highlight as they read it, so they can see what.
so that is available,
Mhm.
and that's included?
Yes, yes. And they give us 7 years instead of 6 years. Their standard was.
No, I was just trying to figure out, because the online extension, that was an extension. Well, the online access is the full text of the book.
Yes,
It's the full book is online.
yes. And along with, they always, even though we might keep the book for 10 years, which is, we've kept this a little longer than 10 years, they update current events and careers and activities with their online component text.
That's 1 year. What happens the following years for online?
Well, we get it for 7 years, so at the end of 7 years, I will put it in my budget, and I would ask the teachers, and it would probably come out.
So it's 8 years.
Yeah.
No, it's 6.
It was 8.
6
We got
to 7, okay.
Yeah, the standard was 6, we got 7, because they give us 7 for last year's book too. Okay. This is a complementary STEM-based kit that we want to incorporate into 3rd grade to complement the next book I'm going to talk about. So 4 teachers attended an IU workshop on EIE, which is Engineering as Elementary. They were trained on their program, and we evaluated all the units they have, which they have them for grades 1 through 6. So we know that research shows that kids that are exposed to STEM before 5th grade tend to stick with it longer, especially girls. So we wanted to try something in 3rd grade. It wasn't a tested area for PSSA, and we only have 3 units in 3rd grade already. The kit we picked first was building bridges, or how to get from here to there. It's adorable. It reminds me of Camp Invention. The teachers get a manual, they get activities. It could last anywhere from 4 days to 8 days, depending on what you want to do. The teachers that tried it thought that it would be great to do during PSSA week when kids are tested and then they can get up out of their seats. The other reason we picked this one to start with is its total STEM integration, where it complements social studies and our ELO program. There are 3 or 4 books of the Journeys program right now that actually are about bridges. So one student I quoted, he quoted, it was the most fun learning I ever had in science, and they have a design challenge, and it will be STEM for all, embedded in 3rd grade. So, kind of doing this a little backwards of how, when I first started this job, people wanted me to swap out Land and Water. Mary Ann, you might know from way back when. Land and Water is in 4th grade. And the next book I'm going to talk about is Land and Water, but it includes rocks. 3rd grade currently teaches rocks and minerals. So if we're going to replace If we're gonna upgrade something in fourth, I have a hole in third. So next generation science standards and Pennsylvania content standards say that motion and matter should be in third grade. So this is filling a need, which I'll talk about the whole in the next slide. I'm sorry about how that's backwards. So this is a Falls Delta kit. It's upgrades what we currently do, rocks and minerals from 2002, which has no online extensions. They actually don't even make the mock rocks anymore for us to purchase. So we were desperate to find something, and the science leaders got together and thought this was the best match. There's STEM activities. It has an interactive ebook. It also highlights the words for fluency as it's read to them. It comes with a class set of books. The book is a supplement. The kit has 4 investigative activities, and the kids absolutely love it. And we had we had 6 teachers pilot this book. We selected it last spring, and they started. They were allowed to do it in whatever marking period they wanted. But the feedback was positive. One more, sorry. I'm so sorry.
So just a quick question, refills for the kits, so I assume every year we would need to.
Well, we refill anyway.
Yep.
So right now, a refill for the mock rocks, which we would be replacing, is $40 per refill, and it's about the same for this. It's in the 40s. So it's kind of, because we need to repurchase, and we should be repurchasing new kits every 10 years, and this was one.
Yes.
And the 4th grade science curriculum definitely needed an upgrade, and it's been on hold for a while. We're upgrading. We currently have land and water, and this is now land, water, and rocks. So that includes what we used to teach in 3rd grade, mock rocks, which are currently no longer available. And again, it has 4 different investigations. The teacher said this is, even though we're losing a little some minutes in science, this is streamlined, it's easier to set up. One of the investigations is completely the same as social studies, so they can, use the social studies and science center for the same thing, or teach one and the other, and it's less setup and clean up. It has more upgraded online resources.
How's this stuff shipped?
It is shipped to each elementary school. Well, a new purchase is usually shipped to me because we do training.
Does it show up UPS? Does it show up FedEx? Does it show up semi-record trailer?
I think UPS.
Central look.
UPS. They go to
the
directly.
individual schools?
Yeah, they go to the individual schools.
Is this broadly speaking, the books all come from the same place, the same company, or is there a bunch of different?
Well, 3rd and 4th grade will. For elementary, we have 2 vendors in general for elementary, Carolina Biological Supply, and then Falls and Delta is one. They combine, they merge.
I think you're going where I'm going, which is it cheaper for us to pick it up? Because they're charging us, between all the buys here, there's about $12,000 of shipment.
I know.
And the query is, when we're buying multiples, I watch the TV show where they send the guys to take anything, and.
Falls and Delta are pretty firm with their shipping, and they actually shipped everything to Chancellor by accident at the beginning of the year. So they wanted to charge us 7%. Like, absolutely not.
Wait. They wanted to charge us.
7%.
They shipped everything to Chancellor. What's their sort of normal rate is 7?
Yes, the normal rate is 7, and they gave us 6.
I just wonder if there was a way to find it.
Can I comment
Sure.
on that? In math, we have our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade books all shipped to South because the year that we approved those, that you approved those textbooks, we did that as a cost-saving measure.
Yeah.
And can I tell you that from my perspective, it's a nightmare.
You invested more time to.
I'm investing so much time packing, unpacking. South is always, the books have already started to arrive for next year. South is trying to find a spot in their storage area to store them. We've, over the years, I've kind of worked out that we have the Achieve students sort them for us. Sometimes things get a little confused.
Sometimes things are thrown out.
I acknowledge, I mean,
Right.
it just, it looks when you look at it,
Right,
add
I
it all
agree.
together.
I agree, it is a large sum of money, but I can tell you that, for all the
Oh, it-
6th, 7th, 8th grade books come into one place is a little overwhelming.
Renee, I do have a question for you, and I apologize. It's not on your slides. I think it's already been answered, but you know, the woman who came to us 3 months ago from PETA at our board meeting spoke at length about her concerns about the treatment of the animals as they were being prepared for inclusion in the kits that we buy. Now, these are not the kits you're speaking of tonight.
Correct.
Now, we no longer deal with the company that had the practices.
We never ordered from, we order from Carolina and Fisher, and they were talking about pigeons, which we don't order, and some other things.
Okay, and that's what I just wanted to, you know, we sat through that. I think Dr. Frazier spoke with that night, that he would look into it.
And he
I-
asked me, and I answered him.
All right, so just to be very clear, and that's why, you know, in a loud voice, I just want to be able to give it that. The person came to us with concerns about the treatment of the animals that were being used to prepare the kits that go to schools. They don't go to our schools. We're not involved with that organization that prepares those,
We're
that
not-
were cited.
We don't order from that vendor.
That's all. I just
And
wanted,
Dr. Frazier did follow up with that individual as well.
he did, but I just, because it was said in a public meeting, and I don't know that we really closed the door on it, and it just, while Renee is here, we could close that door for sure and lock it. So, sorry.
Consider it.
Any other questions about science textbooks?
Yes. I don't know if this is too technical, Mrs. Devlin, but
Renee?
I don't know if this is too technical or too deep down into the course material, but what kind of math is involved in these science textbooks as well?
Well, the textbook isn't the curriculum. The math, in elementary, I think in 3rd grade, the motion of matter, the measuring in centimeters, and the predicting the weight of different objects for the bridges, and physical science, it's algebra. The math and science are aligned in high school and in elementary.
The centimeters, the geometry and measurement and data standards go along with, in math, actually go along with what's being taught in science.
Okay, so they're kind of.
They're parallel.
Correct, yes.
Great.
They're integrated right in.
Right. Social studies.
Which one's my favorite? All right, so I have 3 books. This is a great book. This is the one I'll start with. An 8th grade text, and then an accelerated psych text in high school. So first one is for grade 7. It's a world history text. And the 3 things that I'll talk beyond the sign are, we were looking for fit, the approach that this textbook takes, some of the resources that are involved, and I can do some cost comparisons too, and talk about the savings. So the 7th grade book that you're looking at here and the 8th grade book I'm going to talk about are both published by Cengage in cooperation with National Geographic. And the thing that we liked about the 7th grade book was, first was fit. Typically with a world history text, you'll get one that is kind of more Eurocentric, where you get Greece and Rome, and then you go into the Middle Ages and European studies, or you'll get more like a world studies approach. So we were looking for something, a textbook that had kind of a little bit of both. And we're also looking for a textbook that, 6th grade sets up 7th grade, sets up 11th grade. So this textbook we piloted for 2 years in 7th grade, and we also have a pilot that's going on in 6th grade as well, trying to see if we can get our students on the same platform in 6th grade and 7th grade. So the fit of this textbook content-wise coincides with our current curriculum. Greece and Rome goes into the Byzantine era, and then the early and late Middle Ages. Second thing that we like about this text is our courses currently are built around essential questions. Each of the units that Cengage is constructed is also around essential questions. For example, our course essential question is, what lessons can current events teach us about past, present, and future? One of their essential questions for their unit on Greece is, what lasting influence did ancient Greek culture, have in the modern world? So it's, when you're looking at a world history text, since you're covering a lot of ground, it's that big picture, that high altitude approach that we've been doing. This has a nice fit. The approach in several of the units, they really get into the archaeology, how archaeology, when you're talking about ancient civ, that's the building block upon which that history is built on. So they have a special section on New Treasures of Tutankhamun, those that were traded along the Silk Road, Roman armor, Byzantine mosaics, to really get into some of the archaeology that the history is built upon. And they have interviews with National Geographic employees that are out in the field doing the archaeology, which was terrific. Resource-wise, for teachers, the assessments that come with this are differentiated to the point where we can use this textbook in our academic and our honors section. I think one of the most economical ways to differentiate between honors and academic is with assessments, not necessarily having two different textbooks. So the scalability for this textbook.
What's the reading level?
What's that?
The reading level?
The reading level on the digital version can be scaled as well. So if you have an on-level reader, or a reader that is maybe like an approaching reader in English, an EIL student. This textbook has that, and the 8th grade textbook I'll talk about as well. And Mr. Rupp, to your point about the audio piece, I think this is pretty much standard with digital versions of books. If they're on a digital version of the textbook, they push a button, and the text can be read to the student.
And highlight.
I find, and I don't interrupt your spiel, but I find this idea that you can derate the readability fascinating, and I'd love to see that if you just capture it on a YouTube and let us see that as a brief demo at some point. I think it's fascinating. You could show us, at one level, derate it and show us the same text. I know that's fascinating to me. I think that would be, I don't know, something the parents would know about, so so make a quick, dirty YouTube, and then we can maybe share
Even
that.
if that's a great idea, even if it's the publisher's demo, just a link to the publisher's demo would be great.
A couple years ago, Dean was the first one to buy the McGraw Hill book. Who did that?
I remember that.
You should sample, but we all might not.
And as far as like cost is concerned, I did, maybe this is beyond what you want to hear, but I did kind of a cost comparison. This publisher, Cengage, McGraw, out in Midland. The price that's up there, it's print plus 6-year digital. But they threw an additional 2 years of digital for us, which was terrific, where other publishers, it's a $20 a year per student cost for extra years. Cengage was willing to throw that in an extra 2 years. So we're getting an 8-year digital access with both the 7th grade text and the 8th grade text. So, questions on, I guess we'll move over to 8th grade. I'm going to shift gears into U.S. history now. So with the U.S. history book, this was piloted at Holland Middle School. And the four things we like about this are the resources that are available for teacher and student, the narrative of stories. You can see the title of the book, American Stories, and as I'll talk about, the way the book is constructed really stays true to that narrative history.
I'm sorry, I got it.
Yeah.
But if you go back to go back to shipping, you're saying that you get 5% of the cost, and that's how they figure it out?
Yeah.
So if you buy books that are really expensive, same amount of books, same weight, and you're paying 5%, so you're paying a lot more shipping.
I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess they're using like the weight of the book to determine.
Well, they're using the dollar value
Yeah.
of what they're saying, which to me is a big disconnect. Just thinking about what
But
a container of wine costs to
It's
ship,
in the
and weighs it.
substandard, right? I mean, I think we'd have to fight the industry on that. I don't know that we,
They're making a margin on it.
I agree, it's great for them, but I feel like it's
It's right up there with distribution costs for your vehicle when you buy the vehicle. Whether you live in California, you live in Pennsylvania, you live in Texas, they charge you they used to charge $525. You couldn't get around it to Kyle's point. You just couldn't escape it.
I'd like to hear what I'm still going to support.
We got a big truck.
I'd love to hear what they say, and I'm happy to follow myself. Say, we're
I
happy to
think
pay
it's-
whatever the actual shipping costs are. To do that, because I can't believe that they're going to make a margin on here.
But I'm-
Charging 5% of the revenue, they're making a margin.
They are, but I'll tell you this, which I'm taking from the earlier conversation, which is they're packing to our specs in terms of splitting the order. That's what I'm getting from your conversation, folks, that, they're packing it. I'm not saying that it's worth it, but they're packing it to our order, which is 760 here, 37 there, and 15 here.
Mine is for elementary, the book and a kit. This big box of
So
stuff.
charge us exactly what it costs to ship.
All right.
Charge us a percentage of revenue.
So tell us about American.
Shipping and handling. The
handling,
really.
Exactly.
So I'll
I'll be
get
back before midnight.
Yeah. So with the 8th grade book, it's the thing that's unique about this is they to try to tie what's going on in the content of current events. For example, each section of the textbook begins with an introduce and engage section for the information on the Revolutionary period. They already have a blurb there about the musical.
Seeing this is honors and
Yeah,
academic also.
here again, yeah. The assessments and the readability, this is something that they can use in academic, but they also have materials there to differentiate for English language learners, gifted and talented, and also create based. So it's enough of, the teacher saw that this was enough impact that they can use it across the entire grade. And again, I think it's a much more economical way to differentiate the course, what we're doing locally, rather than, you need a textbook for honors, you need one for academic. That was a small point.
Well, the social studies coordinator doesn't say, and the book we're using for our up to 1877 was published 10 years ago. Doesn't use that same, it's not the same cachet that the science teachers use.
Yeah. Both the 7th grade and the 8th grade book were two, I think it's a 2006, 2007.
Doesn't have the same ring.
Yeah.
When you're looking at history,
Our Civil War turned out the same way.
Since you brought it up, it seems like the general lifespan of the textbook is 10 years. Is that across?
We've been getting the 10 year in social studies. We're able to get 10 years out of the print textbook. And that's why I think publishers are aware of that, and that's why I think that they're on that. I think it's typical for the digital version of that 6-year, sunset, but, Renee and I
would say that,
and Julia, if you talk to them, that's one of their, they'll put in like extra digital years.
The digital content get updated presumably?
If they can, they can update it. It's easier for them to update that in real time.
I just think it's.
That's part of the difference now. Like we had our vision program that we adopted back in 2010, I think, 2010. And at that time, when the platform was created, there was not opportunities, there wasn't an availability to update curriculum, which is what is so frustrating for classroom teachers right now. Whereas the new platforms that are coming out now, they're able to update them right away. And so any glitches, because every textbook always has errors in it, so they can always fix all the errors online. They can, they can update if the standard changes, or they can always update.
But we also spoke about this last time too, which was some of the devices, some of them came with CD-ROMs.
Correct.
Which were not an online capacity. Now we don't buy machines with CD-ROMs.
Well, my point is that when you look at the prices of these textbooks, it looks expensive. But when you figure out that you're using them 6, 7, 8 years, it looks a lot more affordable.
Your previous book was $91 a book. It's $9 a student. It's $9 per student year, which is not very much.
I guess my third one in that in the set, and there's the costs. And here again, like the 7th grade book, same publisher. We have access to National Geographic resources, which are visually to just I just took a couple of screenshots from some of the stuff that's in the textbook. So they use painting with a Winslow Homer painting when they talk about freedom readers. One of the narrative stories they talk about is how the efforts on plantations for slaves to teach each other how to read. So they use a Winslow Homer painting. This is a commission painting that deals with Lewis and Clark and their explorations west. But again, National Geographic photographer here, there's a section in this textbook. He talks about how Civil War photography we use, the first American War photography. We have a record of that, and how National Geographic is really bringing in their sources visually. So that's one of the things that was really appealing about this book. The same thing here, an additional 2 years of digital access with that. Okay, now I'm going to switch gears into psychology, which.
Sorry. Dean, I'm sorry, could I interrupt you for just
Yeah,
a
sure.
second with a question? And I don't know if this is appropriate, you're presenting textbooks, but it occurs to me, we live in just such an historically rich area. As I see, colonial history, and we're sitting in Newtown, Bucks County and its tradition of Underground Railroad stops, or World Civ when we have University of Pennsylvania Museum on our doorstep. Is there any kind of formalized tie-in with resources locally and curriculum?
There is, and I'm going to apologize to you, but I'm going to try to
I'll put you on the spot
multitask.
with that question.
There is, in this book, the museum that just opened up in Philadelphia, the American,
Right.
the Museum of the American Revolution. There's a section in here that is specifically tailored to that. That's in it when they talk about that Valley Forge. So the answer is yeah. I'm not going to be able to find it.
That's okay. And I'm guessing it's up to individual, again, I'll put you on the spot. I'm guessing it's up to individual teachers or buildings, how they might organize class trips.
Here it is, I found it. Good. Grace Under Pressure.
That's the
And this is
museum.
open within
Yeah.
the last year and a half.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Yeah.
So the current tie-in, and this is the teachers that teach 8th grade history, one of the things that they were really excited about when it comes to teaching that happened in our backyard, happened in our district. So yeah, that's in there's the connections.
So I would hope that they would make use of opportunities to visit. Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for
I
that.
appreciate the question. So we'll go into psychology now. So this is the textbook that's updating our accelerated psychology textbook. And the three things that had appeal for teachers here were the alignment, the integration, and the currency of the textbook. For alignment, the publisher and the author of this textbook, same author and publisher that AP psychology class uses. So this is the textbook we're going to use in accelerated psychology. This could be used for a student that's going to take accelerated psych. This might be their last psychology course, or if this is a student that takes accelerated psych and they tap into an interest, they would go into AP psych. It would be on the same publisher, same author, and so there would be consistency with unit construction, terminology, etc. The integration piece with this, it was piloted at North, and it worked really seamlessly with Canvas, which we're looking at as far as an LMS for the district. And the one course that social studies runs in a distance learning or a blended setting is accelerated psych. It was used in that setting in the pilot, so that worked real well. With psychology, every few years or so, the DSMN is updated. It's the Diagnostic Manual Psychology. As that's updated, textbooks are updated as well. This coincides with the DSM-5, and it also came with 12 pages of updates from the previous edition of this textbook. I'm not going to read all 12 pages, but I thought it was interesting how there's a section in this textbook about how new research on brain activation on adolescents and how their interaction with devices, how that is affecting adolescent brain development. There's also a section in this textbook on new research illustrating the positive and negative effects of social networking with new person examples from the author. So it's very current, very contemporary. I think it's terrific.
There were two prices, I was just wondering.
Yeah, the top price, that's print, the bottom is for the digital access. And with this, again, that's an 8-year digital access. So that's why there's no shipping and handling in that. But there again, you can see the 5%.
You have to buy the hard.
What's that?
Buy the print to get the digital.
It's interesting if you go digital standalone,
Yeah.
it's a little cheaper, but what we've been finding with students that print book, be able to go and actually have it in their hands, there's a preference for that.
Not to be silly, but out of curiosity, Does the digital download to a Kindle or other, like, can you download it to a Kindle or another, not that, I don't think kids have Kindles, they may have iPads or.
I believe with this and with the two other, just in social studies, it's web-based. Web-based.
Well, I hear you, but there's a DSM, there's a, you know, digital DCM, DRM, Digital Rights Management, sorry. Now you're being here as sort
Any other questions about social studies?
Yeah.
Great.
For the psychology, there's the nature of psychology makes it interesting that it's both social studies and kind of science. So how does that textbook address the kind of dual nature of psychology?
Yeah, it's a really great question, especially with accelerated psych, which might be a student's first experience of psychology. They might come into a course like that thinking, I'm going to be learning about behavior, interaction, why I do what I do. But this textbook, just like the AP textbook, the first chapters are brain science, and it's starting from here about the source. They're going to know methods of therapy and psychological disorders, but they're also going to know hypothalamus, and cerebral cortex. So yeah, the science actually typically begins with the textbook. Hypothalamus.
Very safe.
Renee will talk. Yeah, Renee, you're getting the eyes. The hippocampus?
I can get through a amygdala, but
The hippocampus, yeah, that's not the school.
All right, now we move on to family consumer studies.
Hi, we're looking to replace a textbook from 2002 at our existing middle schools. And with the opening of the new middle school, we thought it was time to also get a new textbook. The textbook we use for both 7th and 8th grade, and we use it as a classroom set. So we're only requesting 30 for each middle school. And at the middle level, students in the arts will have double periods. And so this allows us to do a little bit of background information and learning, as well as a lab in the same class period, which we find is helpful for retention and learning. We would use different chapters for the different grade levels. Obviously, we only see the kids for a sixth of the year, to cover the entire textbook would not be possible. So we kind of pick and choose using our priority standards what chapters we want to address. For example, 7th grade, we're addressing basic safety, basic kitchen safety rules. We also get into the nutritional aspect and doing My Plate and the dietary guidelines. Our old textbooks are so old that they're My Pyramid, they're not My Plate. So we want to, we don't want to have to be explaining, well, My Pyramid's the old version of My Plate, and it's the same idea, but it's expressed differently and that sort of thing. So, we'd really like to update our textbooks. This readability level is 7th grade on this, although they said the vocab was a little bit lower. Some of the highlighted words are words that are commonly used in the household and in vocabulary, but our kids still need to know them. One of the great things is it also has some charts. I mean, you can get information online, but it's information that directly speaks to adolescents. For example, if you're looking for nutritional requirements, your daily values, your dietary reference index, your adequate intake, it specifically gives the intake for males and females 9 to 13, and then also 14 to 18. so the students can find their category right away and assess their nutritional requirements. for
So quick
certain
question
meals.
for you, I know
Yes,
this is a copyright 2016.
right.
Is this the most up-to-date text that you want to purchase, or are we
Uh,
perhaps getting a little overbooked to save some money?
This is the most, there's essentially just two, McGraw-Hill and there's just 2 or 3 publishers, and this is the newest.
Okay, I
This
just
is,
didn't want to make sure we were buying something, well, I mean, it's not that.
yeah, this is the newest.
Then I want to make sure.
I was gonna say, You had me at 2002.
No, I did, but
I am
you guys are always very, very cost conscious, so.
You had me hit 4,000.
That we learned, I
Right.
saved $1,000 by getting the book was a little over.
No, there was another book.
Standard change, I mean, some of the
There
standard
was
change.
another book we were considering, and it was the same, same publication date, but we had the readability study done, the readability was on a lower level, and I didn't feel I could bring it before the board with that.
I just want to make sure when we do buy, we're buying the best that we can and the newest.
This also comes with digital teacher resources, and those digital resources the teacher can use. You can upload them to Google Classroom, you can upload them to Canvas for the kids if you want to be used within the context of your classroom activities. So I thought that was, excellent. They're giving those to us for free to go along with the textbook. So that's I think that's pretty much it, unless anyone has a question for me.
Great.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, one more thing. All students see these, so it's not just 60 students, obviously, it's about 2,000 students will see these books during the course of the school.
And their classroom sets.
Yes,
Yeah, because I thought of that before, because they only have them for 6 weeks. Where do they go with home sets? They'd be tattered
Yeah.
quickly. Because they have no private ownership.
Wouldn't be worth the time to issue them and collect them.
But like junk in a week, yeah.
And, it's good to fall back on it if the internet happens to be down or something like that. Plan B.
Smart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on to world language.
Okay, we are starting a new German series this year. We were up to get a new German book, so we are starting in German 1 at both middle schools next year. And it's just a book that the German teachers decided they would like to use. It's an updated version of the current book series that they use in German 1, 2, and 3. It is Deutsch Aktuell 1. And I got training on the pronunciation.
Yeah, you did that.
So-
You were here for the French one, and one language was not yours last time.
This isn't mine either. But I did get some training on the pronunciation. The cost is $169.95, and that includes all of the online resources as well as a hard copy of the book. It really doesn't cost that much more to buy a book along with the online resources we found. We found this a couple of years ago, so we do get a hard copy of the book for everybody. We did pilot. This is from EMC Publishing, so we piloted EMC Publishing as well as Vista Higher Learning, which is what we use in our French and Spanish programs. We had reps come out from both publishing companies to present to our German teachers, and they both also gave us not only the level 1 books for our teachers, but level 1, 2, and 3, and online access for all 3 years this past year, so that the teachers could look and see how it rolled out in the future and how it would play into our curriculum at level 4 and 5, and preparing the kids for AP if they chose to go on. It has a lot of videos, a lot of we do walking tours to different parts of Germany. They have a lot of speaking activities. The online textbook is available, of course, as well as online activities, and they have online activities that give you immediate feedback, where it's very basic in German 1, but there's grammar activity. It looks, say there's 1 to 20, you've got number 3, 4, and 5 wrong, and this is why I'll explain why they get the correct answer, which I find to be very helpful. So the kids know immediately why they got it wrong, and they can come the next day and question the teacher if they need further help. But this is what
With ED at each school, what is the assumption on the number of sections?
I don't know. The number of sections at each school.
You're ordering 80 book
Oh,
in
okay,
each
exactly.
cool.
school.
This was done earlier in the year. I'm sure I think we have 2 at each, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. 2 at each.
Right? Not to be stupid. So this is German 1 at the middle school. We offer German 1 at the high schools too, right?
We have offered it before, but the enrollment has not supported it for the past 2 or 3 years, I believe. So,
So if you don't start German in middle school, you're not doing German in high school.
And French.
Yeah, no, I get it. This is the ongoing problem when you offer many languages. You run many sections in different classes. That's not the discussion here. I just was trying to understand what we're buying and where we're buying that. Were you to ramp up German at middle at the high school, were there to be demand for it? Is it still offered, Barry? I guess to pull you into this. Are we still putting German 1 in the offering book for the high school? So, you know, I'm just trying to understand where we're going here and how this works. That's because conceivably.
Because I
Go ahead.
don't imagine kids are starting a new language in high school, right? They're either continuing with.
you can start Latin in high school. So.
Yes.
So
So
that's
my
a
daughter's
new
a Latin
language,
student.
yes, so they start, that's a new one they can start.
That's it. And I don't,
Well, but there's a
Spanish
percentage
one.
of students who aren't taking language in 8th grade. They're starting in 9th grade.
Right.
That's my point.
Yes.
Some may
Okay.
not want to.
understood.
You know, when could conceivably get the kid who's a polyglot, you know, and decides that, you know what, I want the first year of German because I'm doing so well in something related, probably not German specifically, but I can see someone who's done a couple years of French and maybe one Spanish because they're both Romance languages and there's, well, how well would I do with it? And they wanted to get a taste of it. Hey, it's the nature of question, being inquisitive.
Any other questions about the German book? All right, last but not least, we have
Of course not. So as you know, we've been looking, as the PA course standards have come online, we have been evaluating our math curriculum K to 12 to ensure we align. We focused on the middle schools and assured ourselves that our academic level courses, 6, 7, 8 were aligned when we adopted a new book a couple years ago, and now we're starting to look at our honors courses, and we've also along the way noted that our PSSA scores seem to take a dip in 8th grade, and trying to evaluate what, as a district, we can do to continue to have those scores rise. And by evaluating our PSSA scores, we saw the areas that students were struggling with. And we noticed that some of the students that were struggling in particular areas were students in our honors courses. And we thought, okay, we need to get a curriculum that is aligned to the 8th grade standards because our honors students take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and those Algebra 1 standards are different than the 8th grade standards. So if students are in our current 7th grade honors class, teachers have to go and supplement and find activities to go along with the 8th grade standards that they wouldn't be exposed to. So this book is an accelerated grade 7 book that compacts, because it's an honors class, compacts both the 7th and 8th grade PA course standards so that students are exposed to all of those standards in 7th grade so that as they move to Algebra 1, they have that background knowledge, and then teachers can just go back and review what it is that they need to review that's not in the honors Algebra 1 course, but the kids will be tested on in PSSA. So this book, teachers felt, was offered a rigorous math curriculum for our students. It offers online videos for the students, so if they're absent for a day or they didn't understand the lesson in school, they can go back and watch a video of the actual lesson, so they can relearn the math if they forgot it by the time they got home. It also, our current textbook is very skills-based. It was a 2006 copyright, if I'm remembering correctly. So it was very skills-based. This, you can just look at the pages and see that they're just much more problem-based, asking students to think and apply mathematics instead of just calculating, just doing rote calculations. So it's a much more rigorous book. It will better meet the needs of the honors 7th grade student that just comes at a higher level of math processing.
Is that what you have?
This is the student textbook. It actually is a consumable textbook.
Well, this was my concern, because I'm differentiating it between all the other books we've looked at tonight are hardbound.
Right.
And that one's floppy.
Correct. It's a consumable book. What the teachers have figured out, and they have our current 6th, 7th, and 8th grade book, 6th grade for all students, and then 7th and 8th grade for academic are also consumable. And what the teachers have figured out is they go back to what 1st grade, 2nd grade teachers have been doing for years, and they actually rip out a chapter at a time. So the students really are only carrying around chapter 1. And then
That's not, I guess my query is, do we get the same longevity that we got out of the hardbound books?
yes, because they'll ship new ones every year to us at that price. That's yes.
Okay, I'm an idiot, that's fine, okay.
No.
So that's.
Right, and that was when I talked earlier about the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade books. I get every student in the district, we get 2 volumes of this. Yeah, so it's a consumable book that comes so the delivery is just automatic, just shows up every year. This will, yes, like your
So
newspaper.
that $49,000 for 420 is a yearly?
No, it's a one-time fee. That's our one-time fee, and then every year they'll ship 420 of these to us.
For how long?
For 6 years.
Not to beat a dead horse. So they're going to ship to us 240, I'm going to practice my math. Get this part of it. 2,520 copies of this, right? 2,520 copies of this for $50,000. You had me at hello, you beat the.
You're handling every year.
Right now. Really, they don't make any money on the book. They don't make any money on the book, they make the money on the hand.
Right, I win.
No, okay,
Get out, wait.
yeah, really. But let me, I don't mean to derail this, but I want to point, I made fun of Matt before, but really, when Matt joined us, and this is really directed to everyone who's buying books, but really it's to go back to Rob Reiner as a question. And the question really becomes, when Matt first got here, we had a problem with technology. And our problem with technology was it was expensive, and we try and buy it, and then we got into a thing where we were leasing, which was the appropriate thing at the time. We got into these lease agreements. So we got into the steady cadence of there was an expense each year for this, and we rode at that cadence. And that got us through some rough periods with expenses for science, for technology. And Matt, you're welcome to contradict me if your memory of this is different. That got us through some things. The world changed thereafter, and now we're into a different cadence, but we have a steady spend on technology. And my query here is, I look at some of these things where they talk about, well, we're going to give them to you for 6 years. You get 6 years online for free. And my query is, would they be interested in leasing us the books for 6 years so that we actually pay a portion of it every year for 6 years? Because I'm looking now where we used to extend this because we can push it another year, we can push it another 2 years. Well, they're buying us into not being able to do that because the online ends. So where we used to get 10 years out of the book, to your point before, we're now not going to be able to do that because the book isn't going to be up to date, or the online portion that we've come to rely upon is not going to be there anymore at the end of 6 years or 8 years because they're done. So I'm wondering is, could we lease? Could we enter it as a lease agreement? They won't be giving us new books. It's those books we have, but that we lease them because it would even out our cash flow over time and build us into that steady renewable cadence that becomes, the replacement of books every year. There's a budget for the leasing of textbooks and build it in. I wonder, would it save us money over time? How would that work? Is there
I
something
think
there?
that the challenge with that, I find it doubtful that any publishing company is gonna lease you books that you're gonna return, because what is their return on investment?
It's a $1 buyout at the end, that's what we do with it.
So that's not gonna be advantageous for them. However, like, if you think about it from the sense of, we have these books on the table this year, we will have different books on the table next year.
Right.
So every year there are new books. So if we would use the leasing kind of notion and we're paying an amount every year, I would assume that would compound as we keep adding more books that we need to keep leasing. So
Up to a point, in which case it would be steady over time. So that's my point, or that it would actually, you'd actually get into this laddering, as I'll tell you with our financing, you'll get into a laddering, but it's still.
But at the end of the day, Jerry, you'd be financing all of our textbooks every year.
Right.
And that, I think, would be good.
Actually, when we go, if you're gonna show us curriculum budget over time, we probably go into that, say, $500,000 a year.
Anyway.
Textbooks, even if we even them all out, we'll still be paying 500, but now it'd be plus financing fees.
Well, I'm trying to see if I can knock the financing off, because the other thing it does is it provides an aspect of bonding, because they may tell me they're going to provide this online resource, and then when they don't, I'm out.
That's a fair question.
I mean, when we talk about bonding, we talk about like performance bonds for, I get a performance bond for someone building something, that if they can't fulfill it, somebody else covers it. This would be the bonding that says if they don't still offer that online, they're not getting paid for it. They're out. I just wanted to ask the question. I'm impressed though that you get, it's a pittance for the math books.
$20.
Yes.
So let's see, after
And on that
6 to 8 years, my assumption was that if the online access ends, that you could purchase additional years.
You can,
Updating
yes.
every year. So that's what, my question was, is there a way for us to monitor, or do certain of these services offer like tracking to see how much you're actually using the online service? Could you imagine that kids aren't using it and we're paying for something that they're not using? Or how often are they using it to justify?
I can only speak from the math. There's always a district account that I usually hold the password to, that I can go on and see who's using and who's not using.
I would think that would be kind of important to track, so when we come back 6 to 8 years from now, we can say, yes, we used it this many hours over the time that we've had it. I mean, something, if they allow us to track it, we should track it. Sometimes they're not gonna use it. I don't think a lot of students even know their parents, so in the younger ages, that's one of the things I thought is kids' parents didn't have the knowledge they might get a username and password, but sometimes I don't think they do.
When you get back to school night,
They usually-
science teachers all give them out. I know that the parents remember that it's there, it should be on the teacher's website. so
Right.
they know.
And it's been available for so many years. I think
Right.
it's very much a part of what
Actually, back
students.
to school night, they didn't give it out. It was something that you had to request, and it would be a while before the accounts were set up, and they would give out the all
Well,
passwords.
I can just speak for myself, I've given my students a label to put in their program planning book for their study island account, which I can track their usage, and McGraw Hill, they will have an account from 6th to 12th grade. Many of us use the same, they'll have the same account, the same log on, so if Dean's social studies book for McGraw Hill, they use the same login for science.
And you guys do the same thing, tracking the usage, and do you do that currently?
I think the individual teacher does. District-wide, we do for Study Island for the Keystone courses to see what's the value to buy it again.
I also think that as we move forward and we have more devices in the classrooms, I think that you'll start to see that teachers and students are using them more. I can speak from my classroom teaching experience. It's kind of challenging when when I don't have continual access to technology in the classroom to start and stop and have it use it one day and not use it the next day, use it one day, not use it the next day. From what I'm hearing in the elementaries as they have access to Chromebooks, I'm hearing people talk about the technology that they're using online. I believe that I will see teachers using this more in their classrooms, having a station where kids are, working on some of the online quizzes or things that are available. Because honestly, when you send it home for students, sometimes you can't assume, number one, that, believe it or not, everyone has a computer access, and then networks are down, distractions.
But are you suggesting that, you feel that it would be beneficial to parents to have greater access or greater understanding, and maybe we could convey that?
Promote a little bit more technology to the parents moving forward, yeah.
I don't know what Joe is saying, is talking so much about tracking. Please stop me if I'm.
What I'm saying is when we come to renewal, we had some kind of feedback on how much it was used. But then again, if you're using it in the classroom, it's going to show you using it in the classroom versus how do you determine the difference between taking it home and using it.
And the other problem becomes is, if, let's imagine that you only show that half the kids are using it, you still have to buy it for all, you don't know which half they're using. So, I agree, it is interesting.
Or you don't do it.
It's interesting though to think about that, the less that they have to carry in their backpack from a school safety perspective, you know, what does that mean? Not just, we got into it initially because we were talking about backpack safety.
Right.
But the less that's in the backpack, the smaller the backpack becomes, the less problematic it becomes. That is interesting. It's interesting.
So I can tell you, at least for this textbook, we had a teacher at each middle school pilot it, and they all used the technology piece at home with students. Students were watching videos or they were taking practice quizzes, because they had, you know, the normal glitches when you start up a new program and you don't know the platform so well, that they worked out throughout the year. And the last time we met as a group, they talked about how much they use the online platform at home.
Right. And I think what she was saying was like, I'm not saying track and practice it, but hey, if we see that we're not using it enough, well then have an initiative, please increase your activity on the online stuff, because it's painful, and I think it's helpful.
Any other questions about textbooks?
Yes, about the math textbook. You said that it's more rigorous than the current textbook.
Mhm.
I took honors pre-algebra with that current textbook. It's classes, right?
I think you're thinking about our Algebra 1, Algebra 2 series.
Okay. But yeah, I remember that it
It's a
was.
purple textbook.
Yeah, I remember that one. But yeah, I remember it was there was a very steep learning curve sometimes. So how is this more rigorous in more ways?
Actually, the steep learning curve is different because this textbook is actually provides resources for teachers to teach from a more conceptual standpoint, so that kids actually understand the concept behind the skill instead of just the rote skills. And it provides many examples for students to, you know, adding and subtracting integers, just using counters, showing kids why the rules that they have to memorize actually work, which actually goes back to Dean's brain theory that, you know, when you store it in multiple places, you're more easily able to retrieve it. So from that standpoint, I think it provides better examples for students to understand the math, but the math standards along the way have changed and asked for more critical thinking, more problem solving, more application into the real world, and this textbook provides more application into the real world. If you look, this was the same lesson with adding integers, and instead of just a page of adding integers, it's the problems are embedded in some kind of word situation, which is actually more real life. That you're going to encounter this more than you're going to encounter -3 + 5. So it also helps it make more sense for a student and answers that age-old question, when am I ever going to use this? Okay, it happens a lot in that. Yes.
So it seems like everyone seems to be in agreement with the purchase of these books. So if that's the case, then we can put it on consent agenda for the June 21st board meeting, right? Okay, so our coordinators.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you. All right, and we'll move on to our second agenda.
Bear with me 1 second. Just one, is there documentation, do we have documentation in whatever source we use about gender bias? We used to get a reference. Is
Yes.
that posted in our,
That's in the packet.
Yes,
That's
in the full packet.
all right, so that's in our packets.
Yes.
I was watching something the other day about textbooks and
I used to watch you go through it.
No, I'm looking at the textbooks and they're so politically motivated that I just wanted to, what? you
Thanks
said-
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. So our next item on our agenda is.
You don't want to stay for a long-term budget?
Get out while you can.
All right. So, at the, one of the academic standards meetings last spring, I think it actually was the textbook meeting, we, there was a discussion about longitudinal planning for curriculum spending and, you know, like we have kind of planning for other budgetary items, we have that for this. So what I've done is really looked at some past years and also projected forward a few years to look at the curriculum budget and trying to determine what's the target for kind of an annual curricular budget. And I'm going to provide you with a little bit of that background and what that proposed budget amount is. So when we look at the curriculum budget, you can look at it in 4 categories. So there's textbooks and instructional materials, much of what you saw tonight, software and subscriptions, which you know, some of the textbooks are actually most all of them included some kind of subscription, but there are other subscriptions to other software that we use that's not linked to a textbook. That's part of supplementing instruction and supporting instruction. And then there's equipment, things like that might be purchased in music, or for example, things in technology education, different equipment that we might purchase from time to time for those programs. And then the last is professional development. That includes our induction program, it includes district-wide professional development, things that are linked to our supervision and evaluation plan, our professional development plan, as well as any professional development that might be linked to what the coordinators are doing with teachers with textbooks. For example, you know, they might talk about how they're bringing teachers in to have a session with the textbook developers or the presenters, and so that's included in some of the professional development funding. So those are the kind of 4 main categories of curricular spending.
Does PLC fall into professional development?
It can, but right now, most all of the PLC expenses falling under the Ed Initiatives budget. So when I looked at those areas of spending, and this includes all of our curricular areas, you see starting in 2015, 16, and then projecting out to 2021, 2022. So every year I meet with the coordinators and they give me their kind of 5-year budget plan of what they think is going to be happening over the next 5 years as they're cycling through. And what you see there are the obviously out 1920 and beyond are their projected expenses, what they believe. You know, right now they've not gotten quotes or specific amounts. They're estimating costs based on what they know things are right now. So those numbers obviously are going to change. I'm pointing out 2019 and 20 and 2021 and 2022 because based on the projection, those are 2 years where we're planning to purchase significant programs. So a K-5 math program is a significant expense. We're talking minimally $500,000 to $600,000 because it's multiple grade levels, and a program like that at the elementary level is when you have lots of pieces and parts to it and things that are important. So it tends to be more expensive than just a set of textbooks for one course in a high school or in a middle school. And then in 2021, 2022, we anticipate that we'll be getting a K-5 language arts program, which again will be a significant expense. So those 2 years, while we're looking to maintain a set budget amount, because of that larger program, would be years that they might be a little bit higher than normal just because of the significance of what that costs and how many grades it affects, as opposed to what you saw tonight, the number of grade levels that affects is a little bit smaller number of students than this.
Now, quick question, was grade 6 considered middle level, yet it's not included in the K-5?
In most of the programs, elementary math and elementary language arts programs typically are K-5 programs. And then typically 6th grade is something different. So we currently have a new 6th grade language arts program collections that they're using. that this is the first year that everyone is using it. So it is a little bit different, and math is the same way. There's a different program in the math. Sixth grade math connects more to the middle school math than it does necessarily to elementary.
So in terms of textbook adoption, does it sync more with middle school adoptions, or is it sixth grade just more standalone in certain years?
It depends. I would say language arts, it's kind of, it stands alone. Math, and as Julie had mentioned earlier, where we're really looking at that math curriculum and trying to align it to this PA core standards. Yeah. There's been a lot of look across all grades and trying to work on that in parts. And you know, this K-5 is probably the last big chunk of that work. Yep.
So it looks like this is textbook driven, the largest piece of the expense. It looks like it spikes every other year. Is that just a function of when we buy, or do we do a big program every other year?
The spike of the 2 years in elementary, the reason that they're every other year is what we as coordinators, the core 4 coordinators, social studies, science, language arts, and math, we sat down together and talked about the elementary level and how elementary teachers have 4 subjects that they teach. And when you're purchasing new materials, you have to, at the elementary level, be cognizant of not giving elementary teachers too many new materials and new programs on their plate at any one time. So what we decided to do at the elementary level, particularly with the 4 core areas, was create a curricular cycle in those areas. So we're starting. So next year, you saw there were some science and social studies things. So the science and social studies are going to alternate years between math and language arts. So math will be 1920. 2021 will be some science and social studies because they cut across different grade levels. So you could do something in one grade level and it's not impacting every teacher in multiple ways. But then during 2021, there won't be any new math or language arts. And then that way, 21, 22 will be language arts, then 22, 23 will be science and social studies, and then math, and it'll keep going like that. Now, it doesn't mean that that would be 23, 24, I believe, we'll get a brand new math.
The reason I'm asking the question, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but ultimately I'd love to see this built into Bob's 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of understand that. And we always have debates about what's kind of annual money and what's one-time money. And starting to think about how we use fund balance to pay for that. I start to see some of these spikes that we could have a debate about being one-time money. And is there ways, rather than the tax in a year, which is going to be recurring, right? Because after you raise the tax, it goes every other year. Is say, listen, we know these expenses are coming, and we allocate fund balance, similar to how we saw PSER's increase coming. So, you know, we're planning that way. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think as we blend this into Bob's program, call outs like that are important so we can understand what the best way to fund those things is. Because I kind of look at it, they're almost like capital expenses, maybe not even as big comparison. You guys know what I'm saying, right?
It's a good point, and I think the thing to keep in mind, the way of looking at the curricular budget like this is a bit of a shift for us as a district and the curriculum coordinators as well. They're used to, and they're very good at trying to be economically, fiscally responsible and how they're
But sometimes they get short-sighted,
yes.
right? And we don't even get ideas because they don't think they want to bring it to us. So that's what I love about this.
So this gives you, like, you know, the 1920, that's the projection. But if we're looking at this is what we're trying to keep as our average expense. This is our max limit, if you want to say. Then what we'll do as a team of curriculum coordinators when it comes time for looking at budgets and the textbooks, we'll start to have those conversations of, okay, this is a year for big purchase in math, so everybody else, let's look at how we could maybe adjust some of the things we're doing so that we can maybe try to minimize some of
Well,
that
I think
spike.
you always need to do that, but
Right.
my point is, if you know the spike's coming and we're building a 5-year plan, Doug knows exactly where, you know, what he's got to fix and as a recommendation on when to do what. You know, if we put another one-off line in addition to the kind of annual expenditures, so I'm making up numbers. So say you guys have $1 million to spend on curricular. That's kind of the line item budget that you guys scrutinize. Some years maybe it's 8, sometimes maybe it's 1.1. But you see the spikes where there's an extra $500,000 required, an extra $1 million, you know, required a few years down. We can identify that now and put that, make choices against capital decisions and earmark the money now in fund balance or wherever to be able to plan for that. So you guys don't have to say, oh, I got this spike, so I'm gonna have to make all these cuts over here because I got the spike. If we're planning ahead of it, maybe you get both. And maybe Doug doesn't get some. Hopefully everybody gets everything if it's reasonable and efficient. But you know what I'm saying? This is great visibility to help us plan better and be more efficient and then be smart about, how and why we raise taxes.
Good. And Bob and I have looked at this together and talked through it, and so he's very aware of.
Yeah, because we don't
how
want
we're
you,
thinking through
we don't
this.
want to put the handcuff on the curriculum coordinators because you got something big coming, because we'll shortchange something else to pay for that we don't want to necessarily have to do that. Or at least we want to be given the decision to make the trade-offs.
Yep, absolutely. So this is a graphic representation of what you just saw in a chart form to give you a sense of kind of, Andy, what you pointed out. The majority of it is spent on textbooks and instructional materials. And the smallest amount is software and subscriptions. So then we look at one of the other big curricular areas that's budgeted separately is our library databases. And those really cover K through 12 and are utilized across so many curricular areas that they're not something that fit into any one curriculum. So in library databases, we actually have 3 areas of library. So we have the databases part, which is the biggest chunk of money that we spend. Books and periodicals that we purchase, and we replace books and things in our libraries, and then also equipment that might be purchased that the librarians are using. So one of the things I want to point out, when you look at 18-19 for next year, the increase in 18-19 is primarily due to the purchase of some new web-based technology called BrainPop that you may have heard our tech specialists talking about. So that is a very useful tool at the elementary level across all content areas. There's a lot of bang for your buck with supporting instruction and providing students with really good practice opportunities. And the classroom teachers at the elementary level really wanted it and felt that it would be very valuable. There were 2 buildings, I believe, that had it and were paying for it out of their building budgets. So we looked into the price for that, and our library coordinator, Barb Tiger, and I looked at, how can we get a district license for this? What are the advantages to that versus every school purchasing? Because typically you can get a better deal when you purchase more subscriptions. So we were able to include that in the budget. So that increases this budget over the long term because of that purchase primarily, and which I think is a good thing because it again is really going to impact student learning and give teachers another powerful tool to use with students. So one of the things that we do now, and we will continue to do with the library databases in particular, is Joe, what you had kind of talked about, and we do this with the library databases, is analyze usage. And we pay for all these databases. Let's analyze how much they're used. And in addition to that, it's analyzing, like, are we paying for databases in different places that can have the same function, so that we're paying for it twice for something that we only need to pay for once, because this database will do what this one does plus more. So, Barb Tiger will continue to look at that with the librarians as we look to kind of make sure we're making smart choices about things that we are purchasing for student use. So that gives you kind of a summary of the longitudinal planning with library. There's a graphic representation of the same thing. And what I'm proposing is that we have a max limit, and our coordinators, as I said, are going to work as a team. And for our 1100, which is all the instructional materials, and 2270, which is professional development, that we have a 1.1 million annual budget. That's kind of the line that we're looking at. And as you said, Andy, we'll have those spikes, and we can explain what those spikes are going to be.
Yep.
And then with the library, looking at a $360,000 annual budget. And then really working to, make sure we're being smart about what databases we're getting the best usage out of. So that's what
That's great.
my proposal is. It's not necessarily something I think that needs a board vote. It'll be part of
I just think you
future
folded,
budgets.
I think you folded into the 5-year
Yep.
planning session that we have. You know, you probably want to represent it, you know, when we're in the budget year prior to the upcoming budget, similar to how Doug does the summer projects budget, and tell us, you know, here's what I'd really love to do this year, here's what it costs to doing it down the road, is all those who take the same approach is really, really valuable. I think,
You're right.
Mark will be a big fan of this too.
It doesn't require a board vote at all. This is really, you just documented what your intentions are, budget assumptions.
Yes.
That's all it is. And
Right.
anything that, you know, if it becomes more or less than that, it's the same way, you know, we have Reinhardt speaks about the 17 million X thousand a year that he's going to spend in budgetary assumption for debt service. And you heard him say the other week, you know, if you go below that, then it's this. If you go above that, it goes this. Same thing. It's a strategy.
Builds great confidence from a public standpoint around
Yeah.
transparency and confidence and responsibilities.
Having said that, this is not, when we look at our budget process, we look at certain things that are pre-negotiated contracts. They're contracts. Aramark, it's a contract. It exists. This is not a contract. This is an assumption. It's a difference in a contract or something that has to be earmarked already.
Right.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Battery is up.
Qualtrics. If you remember last year, we got approval from the board to enter into an agreement with Hanover Research. Hanover, I'll start with by saying, very good company to work with. We're very pleased with their product. Very pleased with our interaction with them. Our dilemma is that at this current year, we have a discounted price for their work. Next year, the price goes up. That, you know, if finances weren't an issue, we would like to stay with them as well as at Qualtrics. The finances weren't an issue. So for our work with Hanover, we ended up with 2 very good research studies. One was, most recently done, was a transportation study that the board will get some input from. And then we have the climate survey that we're going to report back in our June meeting. So the dilemma is that the work requires such a great amount of time, and they perform the work. So Sue and I had the opportunity to be exposed to something called Qualtrics. And Qualtrics is a software that, you know, allows for reports and surveys and polls, et cetera. Very powerful. And in fact, Denise had mentioned that she uses it, and actually Hanover, that's the backbone to a lot of the work that they do. So we then had a presentation to our cabinet team. So Matt was there, and Robert was there, Bob, everybody that might utilize this program. And we just felt that we thought it was going to give the district much more bang for the buck. So the difference is we would now be doing the work. So in other words, the next direction we were going to take with Hanover was going to be an alumni survey. But we also want to make sure that we can continue an alumni survey maybe every other year or every 3 years, whatever most beneficial to the district. But we would have to be contracted with Hanover to continue to run those surveys. If we develop a survey within Qualtrics and post that and make it available, we own it, and we own both the survey as well as the data that goes along with that survey. So they've offered us a significantly reduced. In general, when you get to the end point, the costs are about the same. So we had a reduced price through Hanover this year, and for the next fiscal year, it would increase to approximately $42,000 next year. This year with Qualtrics, they've offered us a discount of $2,500. That would increase to about $4,400 the following year.
44,000.
44,000, I'm sorry, yeah, $4, and then they do it on a per student basis. So theirs is $4 per student cost. So based on 11,000 students. Collectively, as our cabinet team, we all just saw the power of the product as well as the ability to have multiple users. Our building administrators can do things at the building level, at the district level. We can build a number of report surveys and get much more use out of it. And again, like ideally, you would have both. We have Qualtrics, and we're allowed to purchase that and utilize that. It would also be nice to have Hanover and give them projects, but at almost $100,000 a year, it'd be a little bit much.
Here's the quandary, maybe you could help answer it if you know that this is the background thing. In the 80s, something called PageMaker came out. They were going to teach everybody that it was going to be online publishing. Everybody could be a publisher. People thought, this is great. It was a tool. It wasn't the skills of being a publisher. And I use the analogy here because I want to help me walk through this which is this the instruments? Is this the engine that drives it? And who's doing the analysis? Help me understand who's doing the analysis with Hanover. Meaning, is this the page maker of surveys, but still someone needs to put together the instruments and do the analysis and understand it? And with Hanover, a full package, a turnkey package that included that analysis, and now we don't. Help me, do you understand what I'm trying? I don't know what I'm looking at.
I think you, and I'll look to Denise who uses it, I think the way you define both is pretty accurate. The only difference is that Qualtrics does provide a number of supports to assist us. In other words, we talked about an alumni survey. So clearly we can develop our own, questions and insights to the survey, but they do have a support that would help us to develop questions to put into that survey. But it is, in and of itself, is the tool. So Denise, I know that you use it and maybe
I just have a bunch of questions though for the structure of your the license is entirely different. So you're saying they charge $4 per student, and is that unlimited surveys, unlimited users, unlimited submissions?
Yeah, we are.
Wow.
We're giving 10 administrative users.
10 administrative users.
Which means to develop the,
survey instruments.
well, not just that, more people can develop the survey instruments.
No.
I spoke with him, I said, what if we want more? He said, listen, 10 is gonna be more than what you would probably want for that piece of it, but multiple users can access.
It just means 10 logins, that you could give multiple people the same login.
Concurrent.
Right, but so it's 10 logins, unlimited surveys?
Unlimited use of their product, correct.
Wow.
At $22.5 for this year, and
Okay.
moving, now it's educational pricing.
Right. Okay, now I'm just trying to wrap my head. So the thing is that Hanover, you're contracted for a specific project. Okay? So this, you have in mind an alumni survey, but the reality is you have the tool. And then you can then use it for who knows what else. Now, and I said this to you before, this is gonna sound incredibly nerdy, but I've been using Qualtrics for 8 years. And I have used many different software platforms over the last 25. Qualtrics is exceptional, and it's actually kind of fun. The reporting is fun, the tools, I know I sound nerd, but the other things that for me that stand out with Qualtrics in my personal use is that their customer service is exceptional. They are available at all times. I mean, I have leads morning, noon, and night, 7 days a week, and they are always available. Like it's just been, they are a fantastic company, and the upgrades that they've done to the platform over the years have been steady. When they introduce new uses, the training that's available, the information that's sent. I have, in the 8 years that I've been with them, I can recall one incident of downtime for about an hour. And that was extraordinary.
This is a hosted service.
Yeah.
And you may know it, but I would expect that between Matt and legal counsel, we'll look for certain protections around privacy.
Yeah,
I'm not sure whether those exist. I understand.
Well, and also, I mean, I use a couple of different platforms, and you'll appreciate this. I mean, not every survey company that I use is GDPR compliant as of May 25th. Some are working on whatever. They were so ahead of it. And I work in a lot of industries where, particularly in the pharmaceuticals, but there are other industries, finance companies and things where the restrictions on security around data is significant, and I have never had a client who has reviewed their security documentation where they've said no.
So they're HIPAA, they're ISO, they're,
FERPA, they're all compliant across the board.
okay, if someone's audited that, not us, but they have an independent audit.
Like Denise was just saying, the background.
They did make some, Rob did ask for a couple of changes, which they were willing to make. They weren't willing to make all of them. They never are.
From I guess my couple things, which are, I'm not gonna stand in the way of it. But I think there are a couple cautionary tales. One is, to Lisa's point, you're right. You know, we would buy a package, we want to study about X, Y, Z, and they do a study about X, Y, Z. We're gonna have to do that. So I'm wondering, you know, a year and a half into this, will we need to add an additional head or a data analyst? So you're not gonna answer that now, but that's something, you know, the total package cost, I need to look at that. The second thing I want to think about was, in my industry, we do, my industry now, and still the pharma industry, we work with a bunch of validated scales and assessments for subjects when they're in clinical trials. One of the reasons we work on these validated scales is because when the pharmaceutical company is doing analysis of a product, they want to compare it to the standards so they can compare it to other products that have also used those same scales, the same reliefs. So my query is, do they have a user group for their institutional users? Because it's great if we do a survey, but I'd be interested to see if we did a survey and took the survey that Upper St. Clair ran, making it up, I don't know if they did one, and we looked at, so we could try and get a comparison basis, because it's great to do a survey, but I so often walk away from those, and I want to do the survey because I want to see, are we serving our public well versus what other people are doing.
And we do have access to their other users once we license with them. And there's a number of Bucks County schools based on, I mean, everybody.
This is widely used in education. I mean, most colleges and universities have.
Well, but you see what I'm coming from.
Right, but I mean, I don't know about that segment. Like, they have areas for education, they have areas like HRIS systems and whatever. Like, I'm more in the, you know, straight up marketing.
Research, yeah.
And they have, I mean, I don't use it anymore, but when I was a new user, they have that kind of portal where you can pose questions and interact with other users. I don't know, you know, I don't know that education thing, but I just know that I believe that Qualtrics is the #1 software provider institutionally to education in the country.
So when you say we own our, did you say we own our data? So I guess the question is, because that data is worth money. Lots of people making lots of money selling data. My question would be what we have access to from other districts and vice versa. So, you know, do we get to see all the other districts' data because we're paying them to see data? Those districts aren't owning their data. They're not getting it.
Data, like,
Just get to see their surveys?
Instrument, right, so we can pull up another online survey and see the kinds of questions that were asked.
Just trying to quantify who owns the data, who gets the value of.
You know what, as a governmental agency, you don't own the data either. Because if you wanted to, you could file a FERPA request for our mythical other school district and get their data at some level. Now, you know, to the point of with privacy considerations, but it's the records of the district.
Okay. I do want to make this clear because how I stated it. We get 10 administrative users who have the ability to develop a dashboard. For the purpose of surveys, forms, observations, everything else, there is no cap on them.
So the way it works, I mean, my license works, like, there's a certain number of us who are licensed, but I have unlimited ability to provide my clients with the view to the results. So they can't create a survey, they can't activate or deactivate or, you know, anything in the programmatic, but I have unlimited client access so that they can see their own results. So it sounds like it's similar.
So we'd like to put this on the agenda.
So what do you ask for, 1 year?
It's a 1-year contract,
22.5.
It would go up to $4 per student.
Should we?
Choose to stay with it.
So we'll have a similar to this company. We'll have a year to experience it.
Yep. And that's what our thought was.
That's good. That's great.
Try something different.
And your action plan Hanover is terminated with the introduction of this one.
Hanover's contract expires after June 5th.
And knowing that they didn't want to come back and give us the same price as last year.
Well, it's interesting, they did come back and offer a slightly down in price, but not over what they were raising the price to.
But it's really not even apples
It
to
is.
apples.
I guess we can always go back if we like that better.
We can, we told
But
them
it's
that, we said
totally-
we can make them back.
Rob, I'm sure Rob,
And they're
every
very-
day for convenience.
And I've said this, like, I've been in the room where Hanover has presented certain parts of research, and I've done others, and we've competed against them, and so I'm familiar with Hanover. They're great. Like, it's a very impressive company, and they do really great work, but it's different. It's
We
a
just think
totally
this would
different
be
thing.
much more beneficial to the district in terms of what we can get accomplished.
Now, does it require a workload of a stretched administration to use it effectively?
How many FTEs does it require?
Well, I mean,
Well, I
kind of,
think so-
where's it gonna sit? Is Susan gonna be, Grady kind of driving some of that stuff from a communication
Well, here's an
standpoint?
example.
Kind of, who's gonna own it?
With Andy coming on board, we talked about
Okay.
having him, at least for a year, taking on, maybe lead the alumni service.
Just don't want to buy something we're not gonna use,
Correct, yeah, I agree.
because we don't have capacity, or give something else up.
And I think our voting administrators can use it probably more locally.
So they can do school-specific stuff?
And
Yes.
it's so,
Okay.
it's
Good.
so user-friendly. It's very intuitive. Like I said, it's fun to program surveys, I'll just say.
Do you have
But-
copies of the 99? No.
For the record, though, since I've been on the board, I think we need a data person to do that analysis anyway, but that's obviously a separate
Do
conversation.
you have copies of the 99 survey?
I have a paper copy.
I do too, that's why I'm asking, well, cleaning house. Do you,
If we do, it's probably.
okay, so you want me to find, I'm cleaning up.
You know where it is, that's, yeah.
I probably can put my hands on
That's
it.
probably the last one was done, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was Denise Park.
And you talked too about like workload and things, like one of the things that, really impressed me with this, that when Barry and I first saw the presentation, and I started thinking about ways that we can use this to become more efficient, actually. So we have, with professional development, every professional development session that we run, we give a survey afterwards, an evaluation of the PD. We still do it paper pencil. So we can use Qualtrics, create an online survey after professional development. We can actually connect it to a QR code if folks want to do it on their phone. And then the great thing about it, most of our PD surveys, they have a bit of a quantitative piece, but then also a qualitative piece of feedback of, what do you need next? What are some of your other needs based on this learning? So in Qualtrics, this would talk about a little nerdy, I was like excited about this, that it will analyze qualitative data and find themes and help organize themes for you to see what are the themes in all the qualitative responses, which from a lens of informing professional development and helping us be better for teachers, getting that kind of data that right now, if you want to analyze themes in an evaluation of PD, you've got to go through each person's paper and look for it yourself.
And I've seen that tool evolve over time, because in my job, we used to have to outsource coding of qualitative answers because we didn't have the bandwidth ever, and that it's.
Oh, I hate verbatims.
But it's a great tool because it just, you can set up your categories, it quantifies in real time, like it's.
I want to ask one serious, you were both nerdy in one sense, I'm going to be nerdy in a totally different sense, which is, I'd like you to look at the policy that talks about surveys that we have. We currently have a policy around surveys. I want to make sure that's of students. I also would like to see some guidelines. It's not policy, but more as an administrative reg that dictates the protections that we put in place around the surveys and the instruments that are going to be administered. Is there a release before things are set to make sure that they're not asking questions that are inappropriate or might cause us further problems? Maybe there's a release schedule or someone needs to approve them, or distributions of more than XYZ or outside of a certain realm. Think about where we might run into problems if someone goes, creates, we do the pay survey. That's highly confidential information. I don't want to see someone making up, a high school student making up, we sat with the psychology class, making up surveys regarding how many times someone had sexual relations. I don't want to see that survey because it goes down a path that is not appropriate. We have aspects of protection of human subjects, which I want to make sure. So
Actually, surveys is on the Monday, June 18th meeting, right, Matt?
Yes, sir.
but in the context of what I'm saying here, because it's great that we have the instruments, but now we can generate the data quickly. Truthfully, it becomes a record of the district. I want to be careful about what's asked. I'm great for it, but I think there needs to be some aspect of release and control.
Last question was, Hanover was going up to, did you say that?
Hanover's, I looked at their contract price, I think it was 42,000 next year.
So you have $20,000 to play with next year to try to figure out how to analyze it then. If you're gonna be even.
Yeah, they're talking to be 44 for.
Yeah.
But I think you're gonna start using it and you're gonna have so many more uses that it's not even gonna compare. If you did that volume with Hanover, it would be way more than 42,000.
Okay, you're right. So you're talking about a per project.
Well, they,
Yeah.
they priced it with, I mean, that, they suggested we about 4 projects a year. We got 2 this year. Again, I'm not faulting.
No. So they were looking to go with about 11,000 per, you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
On the agenda. Consent, thank you. So we said we were going to talk about calendar. So I guess really 2 things. One thing I just want to put out there that I believe is going to be necessary is some long-term thinking about calendar, because I think we're going to continue to be faced with a quandary. And I think as we present next year's, January, February for the 1920 school year, some things that we've got to give some thought to. And I don't know that it's any one of them, but one of those is whether or not we're going to start to give us the opportunity to even all of these days off that we have during the school year. If not, then I think we're going to have to look at things like considering shortening spring break to like a Thursday, Friday, Monday, which means we would have to change our professional exchange time, which is okay, we can do that, but it would give us a few more days there, whether or not President's Day is viewed as a possible makeup day or other days within the calendar. Just like we're doing in this particular calendar with that spring election day. I do want to say that our administrators do have concerns of having the public in on election day when the kids are there, about being able to manage it all. And, because none of those buildings are really typically designed to seal off their where voters are. So I know we've had some conversations at the board level. So
Yeah, I mean, we knocked it out.
We did, but.
Now we have to deal with it.
That's day number 1 for makeup, which means it's quite likely that that's going to be a school day for our students. So I think that's long term, and I think I just want to put it in your mindset. We already have an approved calendar, so those things can't change. But we did talk about, we locked in the graduation date at our board meeting in April. But what we were suggesting and what you wanted to talk more about was we were looking at shifting the makeup days for weather related. So if you look at day 1, as makeup day being May 21st election day.
Sorry, gang, I gotta run.
See you.
Okay. If you look then at the June, we had indicated that the next 4 days, the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st would be the first 4 makeup days. And the way we've typically run it was we said all 5 would happen in June. Thinking was, since that 5th day pushes us in the last week of June, that instead of following what we've done traditionally, we would jump up to the spring break and take those days, that would be 1 first day on May 9th or May 21st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th days would be in June from the 18th to the 21st. Then 6 and 7 would jump up to that April 15 to 16 before we would do that last week in June. So that was going to be our recommendation. It would be changing what your traditional practice of going the first 5 in June.
The cautionary tale is, leaving May out, you need the cutoff on the decision date for April to be sometime in March. That if you are up to day 6 and 7 by March 30th, then you can use it. If you're not, you can't. Because that's where we ran into problems this year. It was we're canceling school Friday, and you gotta come in Monday. What? You know, there was just, it didn't leave time to react, and attendance was terrible.
With how
And
late
staff.
spring break is, that shouldn't be a problem.
I agree, but I want to put
Right.
it, you're right.
Okay, and I mean, this school year was an outlier, because if you go back and look at it and granted, I don't know, you don't know what next year's gonna bring, but this, in terms of, snow day usage and all these calendar issues, this was an unusual year, because most years we don't even have overflow.
Absolutely. I look at Ellicott City, Maryland. They had the once in 1,000 years,
In 2016.
2 years apart. You know, so
Well,
let's state
they
the
flooded all
case.
the time, but yeah.
Let's state the
And
case.
the dilemma with this calendar is that we're already next to the last week with no interruptions.
I hear you, but I think if you take, it has to be by March 30th. You've got them on the calendar or you're passing them by.
I think that's fair, and 99% of the time, you're gonna have all of your students
That's fine.
by the end of March. So we could identify that on the calendar, that the decisions to utilize, you know, April 15 and 16 would be determined by March 30th.
Exactly.
So that, our recommendation would be to do that, then the May 21st, which is the election day, as long as the board is comfortable knowing that we'd be opening up our buildings and putting students in, staff, and community in there, that would be day one. The next 4 days would be the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. If we were already beyond those numbers of days by March 30th, we would use the 15th and 16th of April and reduce the spring break before we would jump down to the 24th of June to continue the makeup days.
This is better for me, I appreciate that.
Right?
Thank you.
That's what we'll do. We'll get that on for approval in the June board meeting and put under consent agenda. If everybody's okay with that?
So that means.
Is there any reason for public comment on
Yeah,
that?
no, I think, you know what, the only thing I would say is, because this one is always one that we actually take separate public comment on. I'd ask you to run this one separate from
Okay, we can make it.
yeah.
So then you'll release this
We'll get it
in
on.
advance, because,
Yeah.
you know,
I'll ask,
Or you could
Susan to get it.
allow it to remain on the consent agenda, but still ask Barry to speak to it, or someone to speak to it separately, just so that the public is informed, which is.
Well, then it's essentially not
Same
on the
thing.
consent agenda, so I just put it up there so that it won't, I don't want to calls where it's hidden.
The voting, we voted tonight. So it's a matter of further clarification. It will be part of the superintendent's report.
We expressed an intention to vote tonight, yeah,
If we put it on the consent agenda,
it could still come off.
of course it can.
Okay, that's my point.
I love it.
I just think there's been so much public
You know,
feedback about calendar this year.
and there was explicit conversation regarding the voting, so I want to not be,
I agree with you.
I think
I'm
we're
saying
being.
it should be presented.
Okay, thank you.
Is up to, it's a matter of,
See, you kept us past 9.
oh, yes, I kept.
Did we decide agenda item?
I
Like an agenda.
I would prefer to
It's
an agenda.
all about, yeah.
That's it,
Seeing no
Mary Ann.
public comment,
We're all
we are
on the
adjourned.
calendar too. Anybody pull the calendar up?